Thanks for watching NTD Business. Coming up, a wake-up call about kids' education in America, with scores plummeting across the nation during the pandemic. We take a look at the United States' first report card since 2019. And the United Kingdom has a new prime minister. We explore his ties to China and how the Chinese Communist Party may try to influence him. And Chinese stocks tanking after Xi Jinping gets a third term as head of the Chinese Communist Party. An analyst tells us the Chinese economy is going down the drain. We have that and much more coming up on NTD Business. It's great to have you with us. Paul Graney here. The CEO of Kraft Heinz says the food industry will be hit with even higher inflation and more supply chain issues. Company is already facing challenges due to shortages of raw materials, challenges the company's CEO believes will continue into 2023. Here he is.
We've already increased the prices that we were expecting this year, but I'm predicting that next year, inflation will continue. And as a consequence, we'll have other rounds of price increases.
During the second quarter of this year, Kraft Heinz already raised its prices by nearly 12.5%. It'll now report its third quarter earnings on Wednesday. And Americans may want to start saving up for a rainy day or maybe a rainy few months. According to the latest survey from the National Association for Business Economics, more than half of corporate economists polled say a recession is coming sometime before the end of 2023. 11% say the U.S. is already experiencing a recession. The findings, which show the economy is slowing as risks are growing, are based on responses from 55 members of the NABE. Among the biggest concerns, higher interest rates and historically high inflation. And historic setbacks in academic progress for school kids during the pandemic. The so-called Nation's Report Card shows a record high decrease in math and reading improvement. Here's more details.
The National Assessment of Educational Progress, known as the Nation's Report Card, tested hundreds of thousands of 4th and 8th graders across the United States this year. It was the first time the test had been given since 2019. It's seen as the first nationally representative study of the pandemic's impact on learning. It found that across the country, math scores saw their largest decreases ever in the history of the test, which began in the 60s. Nearly 4 in 10 8th graders failed to grasp basic math concepts. Reading scores dropped to 1992 levels, and not a single state saw a notable improvement in their average test scores. Jonathan Butcher is the Will Skillman Fellow of Education at the Heritage Foundation. He says prolonged school closures significantly affected this historic decline, and that it could have been prevented.
It's not just that students were away from the traditional schooling formula that they'd had for many years. It's that some districts, and in particular teacher unions and special interest groups, kept teachers and students from going back to in-person learning when science and families and even district officials had decided that it was safe to do so.
He says that on the other hand, Catholic schools saw either no decline or only a slight decline in 8th grade math, scoring much better than the average.
Catholic schools, about 90% of them were open during the pandemic. Private schools were the first to go back to in-person learning. So by doing so, they basically saved, in some cases, students a year's worth of learning.
U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona says schools have to make sure they're using the billions of dollars they received in funding from the COVID relief package passed in 2021, which Butcher agrees with.
We're talking $200 billion was given to districts during the COVID years in relief money to have about 150 billion as of last spring that was unused. We certainly should be asking, wait a minute, if it was so essential for districts to have that money to prevent these results that we just saw, why didn't they use it?
Secretary Cardona says this is a serious wake-up call to strengthen education efforts. Reporting by Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Bad news, but the good news is U.S. stocks rallied today. The Dow added 417 points, 1 3/10%. S&P 500 rose 45 points, 1 2/10%. And the Nasdaq gained 93 points, about 0.9% today. And Rishi Sunak is the United Kingdom's next Prime Minister. He's now leader of the world's sixth largest economy. Here's a bit of his first address as Prime Minister designate. It lasted all of 1 minute.
I'd like to pay tribute to Liz Truss for her dedicated public service to the country. She has led with dignity and grace through a time of great change and under exceptionally difficult circumstances, both at home and abroad. And I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together, because that is the only way we will overcome the challenges we face and build a better, more prosperous future for our children and our grandchildren. I pledge that I will serve you with integrity and humility, and I will work day in, day out to deliver for the British people.
The markets reacted positively to Sunak's ascension. Bond yields falling immediately. Investors perhaps trust Sunak, who does have many credentials in finance. He was formerly Britain's finance minister, and he worked at Goldman Sachs, as well as 2 hedge funds. But there are signs that prompt caution and concern. In particular, Sunak's family runs a firm that has ties to China. Sunak's father-in-law is the founder of Infosys. It's a massive international technology and consulting firm. Its market cap of over $70 billion. Infosys is a major presence in China. The CCP, Chinese Communist Party, even officially listed Infosys as one of the top 10 global service providers in China. But Sunak himself has made strong anti-Chinese Communist Party remarks. 3 months ago, he said that, quote, China and the Chinese Communist Party represent the largest threat to Britain and the world's security and prosperity. He also said he would face down China. He even gave details on how. He said it helped businesses protect their intellectual property, and that he'd build a new international alliance of nations to defend against Chinese cyber attacks. Sunak also promised that he would close all of the UK's Confucius Institutes, 30 in total. Confucius Institutes are Chinese education programs created by the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, a former CCP official called them a, quote, important part of China's overseas propaganda setup. Sunak referred to them as a form of China's soft power. But despite Sunak's tough words, his stance has been only very, very recent. Before this, he was very soft on China, even to the point the CCP endorsed him during his running for Prime Minister back in July. CCP said that while most politicians took a hard stance on China, Sunak was pragmatic. And while UK politicians are generally hostile to China, Sunak previously said he's pursuing a complete sea change in relations. He wanted the two countries to strengthen their trading relationship and took concrete actions to do so.